So, Esther Juon, can you tell me who are you and what is your professional title?
Well, I am Swiss. I was born in Switzerland in 1954, so that now makes me 71 years old. So had quite an exciting life with lots of different um, things going on. But what's gone through it all the way is that I love to move. I just wanted to move from a very small age onwards. As soon as I heard music, I had to move to it. I remember my parents going to choir practice and they would leave the house so I could move all the furniture out the way, put on a bit of Beethoven and just fly around the living room. It was just amazing. I didn't have the chance of doing ballet as a child as such because we didn't have, that was not something I could do, but I did acrobatics as a child and then belonged to a children's circus for a bit, which was fun. And the performances we did were to finance the Pestalozzi village up in Appenzell. So the money that was collected all went to there. And then the best acts from the circus once a year got invited to go and visit the village and meet the children there. And the children all live in their own house, like there would be an Italian house and a Chinese house and a blah, blah house. And they'd be brought up in their own customs, which was really wonderful. So yeah, no, that was great. So lots of just being moving to music and enjoying it.
So, what is it that you currently would call yourself professionally? What do you do now? You've been a mover and a dancer.
But I've been a mover and a dancer. I think I'm a ballet teacher, obviously, because I'm qualified in that. But as life unfolded, I ended up getting involved with feet and point shoes. And the reason for that was I wanted to have a ballet studio in Brighton in a shop area and live above it, but they wouldn't give us planning permission. So the studio had to go in the basement and the shop became a ballet shop. And if I was going to have a ballet shop, I had to sell point shoes. And yes, I knew a little bit about what worked for my feet, but I was bright enough at the age of 34 to realize that I knew nothing, basically. And that everybody has an individual body, and what works for one person doesn't work for someone else. That far I had come by then. And so I wanted to learn everything I could about point shoe fitting. So I went on all the point shoe fitting courses in London with Fried and Gamban, Elan David and Gandolfi and Isra and whatever was going. And on that journey, I met one wonderful lady called Shirley Hancock, one of my angels. And she was physio to the English National Ballet and Royal Ballet. And she pulled me to one side and she said, "You're not really interested in selling point shoes, are you?" And I said, "No, I want to fit shoes properly. And everywhere I go, there is no fitting system. It's just this shoe does this and this shoe does that. And by the way, this is how you dye it. And it's, a different color. And this is not what I wanted to know. I wanted to know how to support the foot correctly. And she said the most important thing is not to fit shoes too wide or too long because the foot collapses into it. And the wider you make the shoe, the worse it gets. The foot just gets wider and wider with the whole body weight behind it. And the other thing you need to do is make sure that the intrinsic muscles in the feet are really super, super strong. So these are the two bits of advice she sent me on my journey.
Mm.
And so over the next 2-3 years, I developed a point shoe fitting system where the dancer would come in with the existing shoes. We would analyze the shoes and find out what they liked about it and didn't like it. We'd find out what's inside it. And then we try to fit the shoe tighter and shorter. And that seemed to work much better because if the foot was held properly, they're less likely to crumple down on their toes. And so there was more support. And then one of my adult dancers was a physiotherapist, and she became a doctor of physiotherapy at Brighton University. And she was interested in my thought processes. And so we went through the whole anatomy of the foot and tried to figure out how the foot supports itself in nature with the 3 points of support. Where does it go when you go on demi-point? So when you go on point, you lose all the points. So therefore, it has to be the point shoe has to replace the 3 points of support. Logical. um, and that led to how we now support the foot on point. A traditional fitting will only support the toes going into the bottom of the shoe and the shank supporting the arch. But we have 3 points of support, which goes through the third transverse arch, and then the longitudinal arch is supported by the shank of the point shoe, and that shank has to finish in the right place to support the heel. So the heel and the ribbon together make the third point of support, which is very different from a traditional fitting.
Mm.
So instead of running around on the ends of your toes, you're running around in a shoe that supports you in the correct places. But it also means that that foot has to be aligned and well trained and be incredibly strong, because you then have to maneuver the shoe with your intrinsic muscles and the underneath of your toes to actually get that shoe to do what you want it to do.
Mm.
And that's what is not taught anywhere.
Hmm. I think that's such a different way of approaching it. I mean, when I was on point, none of this was discussed. And
Ah,
I know now with the training that I've had in closed chain biomechanics and how feet actually should move when you walk, that those 3 points of support on the foot, the tripod, those are crucial for optimal foot function. So it makes perfect sense to me that you'd still want to have the ability to access 3 points of a tripod, even if you are in this extreme position in a point shoe.
yeah.
And you've been doing this for how long now? It's been a
It
little while.
started in, it's 40 years. It started in 1985. It's exactly 40 years now.
Yeah. So you've learned a lot, I imagine, in 40 years of looking at dancers' feet.
Yeah, and I was lucky that I could always find medics that were interested in what I was doing. They're all going, that's fascinating. Or people that studied biomechanics, or people that were structural engineers, what have you. So if a dad came for a point shoe fitting and we started talking about how to support the body and what have you, they go, well, yes, of course, that's perfectly logical. You know, if I hang a door and the door frame isn't square, the door's not going to shut. End of story.
And you said to me before we started recording this, you said to me that your mission was to save one pair of feet at a time.
Yes, well, yes, of course, because it's a struggle, because everything is handed in ballet is handed down traditionally, and everything we do is done because it has always been like that. So if you ask someone, well, what is the reason? Give me a biomechanical or medical reason why we do this. Oh, we've just always done it like that. And while we have that attitude, we cannot move point shoe fitting or the way we look after our dancers into the 21st century. That's the problem. So up until now, I've been saving one pair of feet at the time,
Mhm.
literally.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
those, I mean, at the moment, I'm working with two, three dancers from the Colombian Ballet Company, and all of a sudden they are pain-free and able to stand on point and dancing on point without being in pain. And that is such a huge revelation to them, you
Mm.
know, to actually get to understand how their body works. And somebody's asking, what do you feel when you do this? Nobody's ever asked a dancer, what do you feel? You just get told you do this, and then you do it backwards, and I want 5 of that and 6 of this. But nobody asks how your body accommodates all of these demands, if you like. And the dancer just delivers and delivers and delivers until she gets injured or he gets injured. We live in a situation where a dancer's career comes to an end, not because they want to give it up, but because their bodies died
Mm.
on them.
Yeah, that reminded me of something I wanted to ask you about, which is, do you think that dancers actually have good awareness of their bodies? Because my experience when I was dancing is exactly what you said. I was just doing what I was told, and at all cost, the
Yeah,
most important thing was to create the shape with my body that the choreographer wanted me to make, and
yeah,
I could tune out any sort of negative sensation because the most important thing was to accomplish this goal of making a pretty shape with my body. And then when I went through the journey of trying to recover from my chronic pain and injuries, I realized I actually have no ability to sense much at all in my body. I have very little. You'd think I'd have good awareness of this, the feeling of things moving, but I actually have quite little. And is that something that you see with a lot of the dancers you work
Yeah,
with?
I see this all the time, and especially in the work that I do now, working on a one-to-one basis. And we examine very basic things like, how do you point your foot? How do you actually go about that? Did you realize that it starts from the center of the hip joint? Center of the hip joint. Where is the center of the hip joint? No idea.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, the center of the hip joint, the whole hip is like Central Station. In Victoria, everything goes through Central Station. And if you don't know where it is or how to use it, my God, the body is at such risk of injury.
And I
How do
feel
you
like
find the balance?
that's an important thing, I think, for dancers and humans to hear because people have always asked me, "Oh, you were a dancer. You must have such good awareness of your body. That must have been such an advantage to you." And I'm like, "No, actually, I think being a dancer created this massive dissociation of the sensation of being in my body. And as a dancer, that might actually be something to work on as a,
Yeah.
a
The,
prerequisite."
yeah, with all my dancers, because what happened to me, I really did not want to happen to any of my dancers. And I always said to my dancers, look, if something is painful, if your body is in pain when you're doing something, then something is seriously wrong. Body has an alarm system, and when that goes off, you have to pay attention to it. If you don't, you will damage yourself. So proprioception and understanding your balance and understanding what you're doing with your body is crucial. Without it, you get injured.
Mm.
And so if we want to do injury prevention, the first thing we need to do is for the dancer to understand his or her instrument, understand the difference between the right and the left side of the body. And what's interesting is that you give them something to do and they can do it on one side, but they can't do it on the other side.
Mm.
Why? I mean, it should be equal, you know. Why don't you carry more weight on one leg than the other? Where does all this kind of stuff come from?
Mm.
And once you're aware of that, you can do something about it. But most dancers have no idea what they do instinctively with their body. None of us do. Because, you know, like we breathe in and out, we don't think about it, we just do it. It's
Mm.
an instinctive thing. I mean, you sleep at night, you still breathe in and
Mm.
out. So there's so much that we do that is instinctive and we don't think about it. And so I take people back to the very basic movements of, how do you do a plie? How do you do a tendu? How do you do a rise? And if these basic things are analyzed and looked at in small detail and put back together, and how do you point your feet, for instance, is another one, because all of the stuff you learn when you're 4 or 5 years old. But at that point, you're just copying the person in front of you. Nobody has a care in the world of how that is done. We're just having fun. We're just doing baby ballet. But the trouble is, as you go up the ladder, none of this gets readdressed. So when they come for a pre-point assessment, they can't do a rise in parallel with their eyes closed. Why not? It's only parallel. If
Mm.
you can't do that with your eyes closed, I can't put you on point because your proprioception's not there.
Mm.
So
And you said something to me that I think is a little bit, maybe in the dance world, a little bit controversial, but I would love to hear your thoughts on it. You said to me that not everyone can go on point.
correct.
Why?
Yeah. Well, for instance, if somebody's got one leg longer than the other, and it's more than 12, I think 12 millimeters is the border, you'll end up damaging a hip joint because one of the hips just gets pounded. The hip joint just gets compressed to such an extent. It's just not possible. I mean, you can do it, but you're going to get horribly injured. That's the point. So if we're coming from the point of how can I go on point safely is different from everyone can go on point. I mean, I can't stop you for your wedding to go and buy a pair of point shoes and try and walk down the aisle on a pair of point shoes without having ever been to a ballet class. I've been asked that more than once in my life, and I just refuse
Really?
to sell the shoes. just won't do it because people have no idea how damaging that is. Um, uh, uh, so that's one thing. The other thing is that some people have clawed toes, which will not lengthen. When they're standing, they're clawed as well. And if you can't lengthen the toes, if the tendons will not lengthen underneath the toe flexors, if they don't stretch out enough, then they will never be able to roll through the demi-pointe onto pointe. And again, that causes them horrible injuries. They can't jump properly either, because if the toes are clawed, you can't get a deep enough plie to actually jump. So, or do a releve. So there are all sorts of things like that which will stop a dancer. And then, of course, the most important thing is you have to have a 180-degree ankle extension. If your ankle doesn't come in line with your metatarsal heads, your ankle, your knee, and your platform into the hip, you can't stretch your knees on pointe, and you can't do pointe work with bent knees. Well, you can, but again, you get injured and it's incredibly painful.
So
So,
I imagine you are often a deliverer of heartbreaking news.
well, a lot of it can be sorted with technique. A lot of it comes from, sometimes it's structural, and then there's nothing I can do about it. If an ankle will not extend because you go bone against bone, because that's how that ankle is constructed, then there's nothing I can do about it. And I've been forced several times to put children on pointe with those kind of ankles. No, they just need to be trained. That'll be fine. It's not. It's actually causes serious bodily harm as far as I'm concerned. And I'll
Mm.
make sure the parents know about it.
Mhm.
And I'll say to them, look, you don't have to be a ballet dancer on pointe. You could be a contemporary dancer or a choreographer in that area. There's a whole lot of other dance you could do. You don't need to be on pointe. You
Mm.
know, there is this obsession with tutus and pointe shoes. And the fact is, I can't watch a ballet company dance anymore because I know of the pain inside the shoes. And when I see the fittings and the screwed up feet in the shoes, I can't watch it.
Mm.
It's just too painful.
You have such a almost a visceral response to seeing dancers cause preventable harm to their bodies. And I'm wondering,
Yes.
where does that come from? I know you have a bit of a journey you've gone through with your body. Can you tell me what
Yeah.
is it
Well,
so important to you?
I mean, I knew that I wanted to dance. I was, as a child, got taken to the opera house in Zurich to see Coppelia, and after I'd seen that, I knew I wanted to dance. Then I had finally, it's something I could package my idea as a child into, but it didn't really happen properly until I left school at 16, and I was sent to the ballet academy in Zurich, and I was just chucked in with an elementary class, not doing any of the preparation work, and I'm just busy standing there trying to follow all of those fast foot movements and what have you. And it's not until a little bit later that I've met a fantastic ballet teacher called Armin Wild, and he was teaching jazz and taking the mickey out of me all the time because I couldn't turn my legs in. I could only do turn now. I couldn't do parallel. And somebody said in the changing room that he was going to give a ballet class, and I was, what, 16 and a half at the time, thinking, there's no way that guy can do ballet. I knew nothing about the world of dance at all. He'd need to see that. And I went and saw this man. Turns out he was trained at the Royal Ballet School. He had done a career on stage, been at Stuttgart Ballet and blah, blah, blah. And and had a fantastic career, and had just retired from being professional soloist with the company, and now started teaching. And there he was actually, instead of just giving a class, he started off by saying, now this is the movements we're going to do, and this is why I want it, and this is how I want it, and you should be feeling this, and you should be feeling that. And he could forever tell you why he wanted something. He wasn't just going to do it because Armin said so. No, there was a reason for it, because this leads to this and this leads to that. And that was where it all of a sudden clicked. I realized that we can't just throw our bodies around. We need to actually know what we're doing. And I trained with him for a couple of years, and he told me that I would never make a classical dancer because I'm too much of a softie. I don't have enough hard skin. And he was right, of course.
I wish someone had told me that.
But I wanted to be a ballet dancer, and so our working together came to an end, sadly, because he became ballet master in Salzburg, and he wanted to take me with me to the company and finish my training in Salzburg, but my parents wouldn't let me go, and because I was under 18 years old, or under 21 then in Switzerland, they could say no. So instead, I went to London, trained with Rombert, and worked as an au pair. So I went to Rombert school part-time and worked as an au pair. And yeah, and also went to the dance centre in London, because everyone went there, and there was sort of 50, 60 people in a class. Somebody comes around at the beginning of class and they just collected the money for the class, and then somebody comes in and goes da, 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 and everyone just follows behind. And the person giving the class has no idea what standard is in the class because it's open to everyone. That's where I had my fall.
Mm.
And because I was asked to do something I was definitely not strong enough to do. And I did it because everybody else did it. And I fell very badly and broke my lower back through lumbar 4 and 5.
Mm.
So it then took me 7 years to get back on my feet. And I had an operation on my spine. They took a piece of bone out of my hip, grafted it on each side of the spine, and then the process started of learning to walk again. The idea was I would be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, but I just couldn't handle that. So, so there we go. But I then had a fantastic osteopath who took pity on me, and he was also a homeopath. And of course, having gone through 7 years of hospital and tablets for this and tablets for that, I rattled. I had so much stuff in my system that come 6 o'clock, I was exhausted and could barely walk back up the stairs. So it was kind of like, it was just really hopeless, if you like. But this osteopath, I was started to teach again then because I was back on my feet and I was in Brighton, had my school. But I wanted to have an osteopath to work with because I wanted to make sure that people get checked out before they came to my classes, especially adults, because I didn't know what happened to them before. And I'm not a medic, I don't know anything about the body as such. So I wanted him to look after or check the dancers out. Like you take your car for an MOT. so it can drive properly, that sort of idea. And when I phoned him, he said, "What do you do to your dancers that you need an osteopath?" And I said, "Well, actually, I'd like you to look at them before I start working." And he went, "What? I have to come and visit you." So he came and visited, and as he walked up the stairs, he said, "Did you know you're allergic to milk, butter, and cheese?" And I said, "No." That's when I found out he was not only an osteopath but a homeopath. And so he looked after me for a good 4 or 5 years, and he got all the crud out of my system through homeopathy and gave me my life back, basically. So that was really extraordinary because, I mean, the hospital and what have you, they do what they do, but then, the treatment's finished, you're out the hospital and that's it, you're on your own, babes. And anyway, you're supposed to be in a wheelchair, so what's the big deal? So
So they actually told you you will never walk again.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So because the risk of, if I tried to walk again, then the risk to the rest of the spine would be too much, because if they fixed 4 and 5 together, then the spine is at risk of getting hurt further up.
Mm.
And the thing also is, I had because of Armin's training, my ballet teacher's training, I had a fairly good idea of how the body works, if you like, because he was interested in all of that stuff. And he'd always said, if something hurts, then stop and think about it, basically. So again, luck all the way down the line.
Mm. I don't know if that's luck, because if someone tells you you'll never walk again, there must have been something going on in your mind there that made you want to challenge that.
Well, I just couldn't. I loved moving so much that I that was not an option for me. And
And what year was this? When would you have been going through this experience?
the accident happened in 72. The operation was in 76. And then by 78, I was kind of back on my feet. But it was not, I mean, there was very little I could do. So, I was able to walk again. I then worked in a shop, taking rental monies for television, TV rentals like we had in those days. And but they liked the way I worked, and the shop was always clean and everything was done and the cashing up was done. So within a little while, got given a whole branch to run by myself. So people trusted me. So I then did my lower Cambridge, because this was all in England. And because when I left school, I could neither read nor write because I was dyslexic. And in the 1950s, 60s, they had no idea what to do with dyslexia. And I was sort of told I would never amount to anything anyway, because I was obviously stupid. So,
Obviously. Yeah. So no, that's so interesting because in the world of, and it must have been a very different world in the 70s in physiotherapy and in osteopathy, but when I was working in the 2010s in a sports medicine clinic with physios and receiving physio patients to come work on their fitness with me,
mhm.
um, there was a lot of talk like that, that physios would tell their patients, for example, I won't name names, but one physio told her client that, oh, you have so much damage in your shoulder, you'll probably never move your arm again in the way you used to be able to. And then she came to work with me, and I mean, I was young and I'm full of hope and naivete, which I see as some of my stronger points at times. And so I was all, yes, of course we can do something with your arm. Let's just try this. Let's just try this. But it had been so ingrained in her from her medical professional of authority that she will never move her arm again. And I could see it in her body as she was trying to do the exercises with me, that she just in her being, she didn't believe she'd ever be able to move her arm again. And I think that's probably why she didn't really make much progress with her therapy, is something in her belief about what her body could do. It had been infiltrated by this very authoritarian physiotherapist. So, yeah, what was it like from the perspective of receiving physio back in the 70s? What was your experience like?
Well, I went to back to Switzerland for after the injury for a bit, and I went to something called Schultes Clinic, and they had physiotherapy, but it was all done in water. And I've got given several exercises, which I still do to this day, that help with the spinal column. Um, and I still do them every night. And they've lasted the time. They were very good. I was very lucky to have really good physios to work with. And also in Brighton, I had a brilliant osteopath, a physiotherapist, and a podiatrist. So I've always worked with the medics. And you know what that comes from? It comes from, I know nothing. I have no education. I left school without being able to read. I need to go and ask someone, make sure what I'm talking about is correct. Because my experience tells me that this is what happens, and I found that out through practically doing something, that is the right way to do it. But I would always check with the medics whether that's correct. And so there's quite a lot of medics who absolutely love what I do, because yes, it's not university based. I don't have a PhD, I don't have a degree, I don't have this, I don't have that, but I have 40 years of valuable experience. And I've got the ability to look at each body as an individual, rather than say, well, I did this for this, so this now works for you. It doesn't.
Hmm. No, it doesn't. It certainly doesn't.
You have to understand the individual, and find the right way forward for that individual. And
Hmm.
yeah, and I think the biggest gift I can give to anyone who works with me is for them to understand what they can do for themselves,
Hmm.
you know, and to learn to trust their body again, and to be patient with their body. I mean, dancers hate their feet. I mean, when you first start working with the dancer, just to look at their feet is kind of a no. You can't see my feet. Yes, I can. Let's take some photographs. And then we're going to walk. We're going to be so kind to those feet. We're just going to, the first lesson is just learn to love your feet. Can you stroke your toes? Can you stroke your feet? Can you give them a bit of a massage? Build a relationship with that part of your body and start to nurture it and look after it. And then they come back afterwards. This has happened with these Colombian dancers. I can feel the ground. I'm connected. Everything I'm doing now lines up. And we haven't even got the standing up. They've only done the non-weight bearing stuff. But because of the strengthening of the intrinsic muscles and of them understanding how to extend correctly and how to go work through the foot instead of just pointing it, makes such a difference. And it just is huge. There's so much you can do if you work with the individual.
And you mentioned having to create a new relationship with parts of your body as part of the process. So
Yes.
with your back, what was that like? Did you have to change anything about your relationship with your body in order to
Yeah.
go through that process of learning to walk again?
Right. Well, for a while I had to wear a corset because that's the only way I could stand up.
Yeah.
But that was just too much like hard work. And then again, through building the muscle banks on each side of the spine through floor exercises. I mean, I was given stuff to lie down to do lying down, which was amazing because I didn't have to worry about falling over or whatever. I was already on the ground. So whoever did all this work with me was very clever because she started me off in a safe space. And I do this to this day. It just made me realize that I always start off with the basics, with something that's completely safe and something that anyone can do, and never ask you to do something that you can't do. Because the thing is to understand your beautiful instrument and then how to look after it and then how to tune it.
I think that's so important. Anyone who's experienced a recovery from an injury and they've been asked to do something that is too far beyond their current abilities will naturally not want to do those things and lose a little bit of hope in themselves and then not do the things and then not really have a great experience with their process. And I think that's like you said, it's a bit of luck, but that's so amazing that you had that experience, that you actually got to work
Yeah.
with physios that could meet you where you were at. And I'm really curious about could you describe what were these exercises that you got that you still do to this day?
Yeah. Well, one of them is when you're lying flat on your back and you have your feet, your knees bent and your feet relatively close to your bottom. And then with your feet, if you push into the ground, the spine lengthens away quite nicely. But you should have a natural curve in the lower back. And then what you do is you rotate the pelvis so that it's like tucking under, if you like. And it's the only time you do this in this particular exercise, because then those muscles, the muscle strands going across the middle of your lower back will engage. And you hold those for 5 counts and then you release. And the first you learn how to do that and then you add the breath to it. So you're always working with the breath. And then once that's easy and you can actually hold that for 5 counts and release it again, then you do that again. And then you end up extending one leg away while holding on to the muscles in that position. And breathe in and breathe out and then slowly come back again. And the coming back is really hard because that's when the pelvis wants to flip the other way. So you need to figure out how far you can go before the lower back springs off the floor. And so it's a gradual build up again, which is for some people it's easier on the left side, and for others it's easier on the right side. Whichever, the weaker side needs to do more work than the other side. So the idea is to balance the muscle strands. So that's one of the exercises that I was given and I do to this day. And if I don't do them and I walk around with a backache, whenever my back is aching, I'm thinking, oh, got a backache again. Actually, I haven't done this. So it's become a routine with going to bed. I do certain exercises to make this happen.
Yeah.
So, and of course, the other thing is the core has to be really strong. So I do various core exercises to help with the lower back. That's really important.
Reminds me of a conversation that I've had with a couple of clients lately. And I think a lot of people that are coming to see me they're looking for a little bit of hope, or maybe they're looking for me to validate that they have never had hope and just waiting for someone else to say, "Oh, you'll never get better." But what it sounds like they're asking for is a little bit of hope. And I try to answer the question of like, so if I just do this enough, will I eventually just be better again? And sometimes I have to be honest and tell them a little bit about what you were describing to me that, well, you might be doing this movement for the rest of your life because that's kind of the default way that your body is now.
Yeah,
And you might not be able to go back to a time before your body needed this help,
yeah.
but that's not a bad thing.
No,
It's just an
that just
awareness
means I
that
can
now.
move. That's, you know,
Yeah.
but I don't have to go to the chemist and buy tablets for it. I just can do this myself.
Yeah.
So when I work with dancers, I try and find a way for them to be able to do what I call their maintenance program on their particular body, so
Mm.
that they can keep themselves in a safe space for their instrument to dance properly.
I also have my own maintenance program and I do it with delight now, but at the time when I began that journey, I was a little bit resentful of the need to have a maintenance practice, but
Yes.
it's very similar to yours. It's lying on the ground. I know if my because I've also had some back issues. I haven't had a surgery, but I've had some persistent back problems where I know that I need to lie on the ground and like you said, that tilt with the pelvis.
Yeah.
For me, that's also a really powerful movement to do. And when I have a little bit of a soreness in my spine, or sometimes it goes into a bit of a numbness in my foot, then I just know, oh, I haven't really been doing my maintenance. And it brings me a lot of a feeling of self-empowerment that I have that
Yes.
tool to do. And I really struggle to communicate that with people sometimes that it's not a burden. It's something that you get to do is take care of your body and you have to
Yeah, well,
do that.
quite. I mean, you look after your children, don't you? I mean, I don't know whether you got any, but I mean, if we had children, we would look after them. If we have dancers, we look after them. Whatever whoever we live with, we take care of them and nurture them. But we also have to have time to look after our own bodies,
Mm,
especially as we're getting older, because it just slowly falls apart unless you make sure it stays in
mm,
place.
mm. It's true. Yeah, you take care of your children, you take care of your home, you brush your teeth every day.
Yeah.
There's things you just do.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just part of what you do, and it doesn't have to be a 2-hour training.
No.
I think my session takes, with all the breathing exercises, takes 30 minutes, and then
Mm,
I go to sleep. Boom, that works fine. You know.
mhm.
So yeah, no, it's that's one of the good things when you get to 71, you start to understand how it works.
And I know you've said, I really appreciate you sharing about this because I know you've written to me that you don't particularly like talking about your back because you don't want
No,
to turn it into a big drama, like a woe is me, I've been through so much and all of that. But you've also said to me that your back and your experience with that has been the biggest university that you've learned from, and it's shaped your entire life, and it's become the catalyst behind what you do professionally and what you do today. So I wonder
yeah.
if you can share a little bit about that journey. How did you go from learning how to walk over the course of 7 years to then getting into what you do now?
I think every time you learn something new, and of course, I've been teaching for a very long time as well. I only would ever teach ballet, nothing else. I wasn't interested in doing jazz or contemporary or anything else. I just wanted to teach ballet. But because I was working with this team of people in relationship to the point shoe stuff, of course, it also sprung over into my teaching of ballet. And the other thing that came into it was gyrotonic, which was another form of movement, which is fascinating. And a lot of that stuff turned into helping me personally, and then of course finding a way of adapting it back to teaching ballet, because it doesn't make any sense if you just see it in isolation. You need to actually then be able to apply what you've learned from it back into what you're doing. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is that whenever you learn something new, it then applies to everything else. So it needs to be sorted in that way so that you can adapt it and take the benefit from it and check with other people and see whether it actually works, you know. Because as we said before, sometimes that works for one person but doesn't work for someone else. And also sometimes somebody needs to do that and someone else doesn't need to do that. But it's having a much more open mind to it all. And I think over the years, through the care I've been given from the medics I've worked with and the support I got from them automatically has passed through me onto the people that I've been working with. So that has shaped me, if you like. And so this is really important to be able to understand how things work and pass that on somehow.
Mm. It sounds like the biggest thing that you've taken away from your own experience there has been that everyone is so unique, everyone's body is so different. And I know that you have an approach that is a method that you use to assess and work with dancers' feet. And it does have a systematic method, but
Mm,
within that, I'm imagining you have so much variation on how you work with each individual
yeah.
dancer to customize that program to their precise needs.
Yeah. Well, I can, because it's on Zoom, what I can do is I film what they do naturally, and I film that and I send them the film clip. And while the film clip gets sent via Messenger or WhatsApp, I ask them what they're thinking about when they do that. And some say I don't think about anything, I just do it. And others go into great detail. Well, this has to be here and that has to be there and na 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 na. And a lot of time they're telling me a lot of stuff that's not actually relevant for that particular movement. I then take them through it again, but I talk them through it step by step, very, very slowly. And again, I film it and they get a completely different experience then. And then I send that video and then they watch that and then they can see what I can see and they can see what they did in the first place. And the being able to see what their body does takes the whole judgment thing away from it because I'm never saying to somebody, don't do this, don't do that, or don't do the other. It's what do you do? What do you actually do? And what's the benefit of it? What are you trying to achieve with this? What can you feel? Is this helping you? Is it not helping you? All of these things are incredibly powerful because it allows the dancer for the first time not to be judged, because dancers are forever trying to live up to someone else's expectation of them, of what something should look like. And I tell you, the best moment is when they turn around and go, oh my God, this feels like heaven. This feels so easy, so natural. I could balance here forever. And you sort of think, yes, we got there. We got that body into the right place so that they feel totally safe as houses.
Mm.
And that's what it should be like when you're dancing. You should be as safe as houses, not taking risks.
Mm. And I love what you said there about your assessment process because it doesn't only apply to dancers and their specific training, but to any body when we're trying to really understand how do we help them is we
Mm-hmm.
want to assess what unconsciously their body is doing
Yes,
by not telling them how to do it, but
right.
saying, here's a movement. Can you do this? Little instruction as possible. Let's just see what your body currently does
Yeah.
before they have a mind about how should I be doing it. And then we can
Yes.
really get to the root of what do we need to help them with. So I love that that's
Yeah.
part of your process as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it has. And it seems to be very successful. And you know, the thing is, when I work with ballet teachers, for them, it's very hard. It's very often, sometimes they haven't done a class for a very long time. But I'm not asking them to stand at the bar and do a full intermediate ballet bar. We're sitting on the floor and we're just exploring small movements or a very simple sequence of movements, sitting down in a safe space, and there's no one else there to judge it. And it's about what you're feeling and what you're experiencing. And it is unbelievably powerful. And of course, what that does in return for the teachers is when they go back and look at their dancers, they go, oh my God, I wonder what she's actually feeling while she's doing this, that, and the other. And they start asking questions. So a dialogue is being created between the teacher and the dancers. And that's so valuable because instead of just demanding or saying, well, Another thing teachers do very often is they just say next week at 3 o'clock, everyone will be on point in that class. We're actually finding out whether the individuals in the class are physically able, have been assessed, are the right age, have enough strengths, have the right technique. It's just they pass that exam, so now we all go on point. And it's just a nightmare. It's just wish I could change that.
Mm. The basics are so powerful, aren't they? I mean,
Yes, very.
what I work on as well, and I think that's something that we connected over was just the love of the fundamentals.
Yes. If
And
that's not there, the house is, if you haven't got a foundation, house is going to fall down.
Mhm.
And it's going to fall down again and again and again. I mean, osteopaths also tell me, look, I can fix them. I give them the right exercises to do. They don't do the exercises. 6 weeks later, they're back again with the same problem.
Mm,
Um, we need to break that cycle that someone else has to sort out my problem. You
mm,
know, I'm responsible for my own body and I need to look after it as best I can.
mm.
And
If only everyone
yes,
have that attitude.
yeah, well, that's what I'm trying to give to anyone that's working with me is that they find out who they physically are, what they can and cannot do, what they have difficulties with, and help them find a way forward of how to get that body to do things. But often the first step is to just love their body as it is,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
Also, the side that can't do it is the side that they've been ignoring for years. And I'll say to them, it's like having children. One child's very naughty. And why is it naughty? Because that's the time it's going to get attention.
Mm.
So every time your body aches or moans at you, it's because you've been ignoring it. You've not been looking after it.
Yeah. So I wish that you were around when I was 12. This is everything that my 12-year-old self needed to hear. So I wonder if I tell you a bit about my
Yes.
experience
So please do.
going on to point. Help me understand what I could have done differently.
Okay.
So I actually started ballet a little bit late. I started at age 12 and I went on point at age 13. So I didn't have much, I guess, training in terms of strengthening my ankles. And also the school I went to, it was the best school in my small town of Brandon, Manitoba, 40,000 people. We had three dance schools, and ours was one that was known for having really good quality ballet training. However, we didn't do anything supplemental to strengthen our ankles and feet, and I was a little bit rushed through the levels because I was starting my classes with kids that were 6 and 7 and 8 years old, and I was 12 because I was a late bloomer. So they wanted to kind of fast track me to get to the level of students that were my own age. And so, yeah, I remember I went on point at age 13, and I'm trying to remember my fitting, what we actually did. And I can't remember much, but I know there wasn't much guidance. I think the owners of the point shoe shop were probably ballet teachers of some kind, but I don't remember really. I think the main thing we paid attention to in the choosing of my point shoes was like, did I like the way they looked? And like, did they look nice on my feet, quote unquote? And I think I just chose an arbitrary shoe based on what I thought it looked like and how much my parents could afford because point shoes are expensive. And I
Yeah.
honestly had a little bit of guilt around my parents spending that much money on a pair of disposable shoes. So, what are some things that I should have known before getting my point shoe fitting?
Well, the first question is, did you make the decision to go on point or did the teachers make the decision to go on point?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it was suggested to me because we had a performance of Nutcracker coming up and they wanted me to be on point for it because my soft shoe technique was good enough for the piece they wanted me to be in, but it was a point piece. So they wanted to put me in point shoes and I was gung-ho about it. Like I really wanted to do it, but
Oh, of
it
course.
wasn't obviously, who doesn't at that age? And I loved ballet and I really wanted to make it a career path for myself, which obviously did not go very well. But maybe this has something to do with it.
Yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely.
so it wasn't 100% my choice. It was pushed in that direction by
Right.
my teachers,
Yeah.
I think.
Okay. The first thing to say is a 12-year-old is in an impossible situation because they have no idea what the risks are. They can't possibly know what the risks are. And they're not in a position to make that decision. and the parent love them. They care for their child very much. They will just do what the ballet teacher says. And I don't know how many times I've heard this story with Nutcracker. Is, everyone does Nutcracker at the end of the year, and then those which are roughly old enough, we'd lost the very good dancers last year, so now the next lot goes on point. And there is this is just something that is grievous bodily harm as far as I'm concerned, because it just should not happen. But it's always somebody's ego that's at stake. I hate to say it, but it's, or it's politics, or it's this, that, and the other. And that's what I want to change. I think we live in the 21st century. We should look after our dancers and not just. I mean, it is now well known that the injuries dancers have as professional dancers started when they went on point and have never been resolved.
It's funny you say that because I remember it was around the age of shortly after that, probably age 13, 14, when I started having some hip and back problems.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So what should I have known other than maybe not rush at that age? What should I have done differently to get into point shoes?
well, in an ideal world, you would have been properly assessed by someone. And an assessment takes about 2 hours to go through, and it's not a dance exam. It's where you look at the dancers from head to toe, at the alignment, at the strengths, at the balance. And then we measure things like turnout, and we measure things like ankle extension and demi-point range, and we measure the strengths in the arches, the lumbricals, how strong are they? And there's various tests that we do to ascertain whether somebody is actually able to go on point or not. And if these things are not in place, then we'll simply say, at this point, you're not ready to go on to point, but this is what you need to work on. So the next thing then is to make a plan of how we get the dancer to reach the standard so she can go on point. But that the whole physical development, as you know, but it depends on genetics and depends on what genetic background you come from. So, the same question is, what age should you go on point? Well, it's nothing to do with age. It's to do with the level of training. It's to do with your physical ability and with your strengths. And that is influenced genetically. If you could, for instance, here we have people from the islands, from the Pacific Islands. They're very big, they're very broad, and they're very hefty, if you like. At the same time, we've got a lot of Chinese girls. And, you have an 11-year-old from the Pacific Islands and an 11-year-old from a Chinese background. They have completely different bodies. And neither of them, for whatever reason, is actually strong enough to go on point at that age. Because also, of course, the bone structure is held back. All the growth plates in the feet don't harden until the late teens, 18, 19. And up until that point, you can cause serious damage to those growth plates. And if you cause damage to the growth plates, then that bone will not grow in the foot. So it's a huge responsibility, but nobody seems to care about any of that. It's
And
just all what it looks like from the outside, not dealing with what's happening in the inside and what that actually ultimately means for that child and that adult later on.
Mm. And what I learned from you when you took me through a session to look at my
Yeah,
feet a few years
yeah,
back, what I learned from you was that I actually didn't have the requisite ankle mobility. I think it was the plantar flexion of the ankle
yes,
joint. You're
yeah.
looking for a specific amount of degrees of mobility, and I didn't have it. And I
Mhm.
also, my feet were very, very different. The ability to actually articulate through the different segments of my feet in an open
Yeah,
chain sense, which is
yeah,
very important for being on point.
yes, yeah.
I didn't have a symmetrical ability to do that. And on one foot, I just remember my foot was just twitching and trying to figure out what it was even being asked to do. So I'm imagining,
Yes,
well, if I feel like today my body is in a bit better of a condition than it was when I first started going on point in terms of my foot function. I've worked on it a lot. But even at this point, like if I were to go on point shoes now, I have zero doubt that I would not have your prerequisites
yeah.
checklist. So what is that you're looking for? What are some of the prerequisites that you look
Well,
at?
the prerequisite for being able to stand up on point is that you can stretch your knees. And if you can't extend your ankles enough, I mean, that's the other thing is people always think that pointing your feet means crunching your toes. But when you do that, you actually pull back in the ankle and you do the exact opposite of what the ankle's supposed to do. The ankle's supposed to come forwards
Mm.
so that, and the toes need to go long everything lines up from the platform through the metatarsal heads, through the ankle, through the knee to the center of the hip joint. And
Mm.
if I can't line all those up, then I have a problem.
So some of that can be its mobility limitations that you can work on and you can get to
Yes,
the point where it's
absolutely. Yeah.
possible. And some of it just might be that person's structure. They might not actually be able to accomplish that line. And in which case, would you, if they're not, quote unquote perfect, would you still let them go on point?
No, I'd retrain them first.
Mm.
So then they'd have to go through the mentoring program.
Hmm.
And what you said is very interesting because when you said you had lower back and hip problems, I wondered whether you had enough ankle extension, and you've just admitted to that
Oh,
you
definitely
had.
not. No, I
Yeah,
couldn't straighten my knees.
yeah,
I could not
right.
extend my knees fully. That was the
So
bane of my
then
existence.
all the stress goes into your spine, goes
Mm.
into your lower back. That's absolutely obvious.
Mm.
So yes, you can go on point, but it's going to cost you.
Mm. It did. I'm sure
Yeah.
that it did.
And this is the problem, people, yes, of course, in theory, everyone, my husband can go on point if he wants to tomorrow, but will he be able to walk next week is another question.
Mm.
That's the thing. We live in a society where we have the right to do whatever we want to do. We just chuck money at it. But for some of us, it's just not possible. And when people get to a certain age, like the adult ballet classes are now incredibly popular. And I've always had a big adult school because I could break things down and I could slow things down so adults could enjoy a ballet class. And of course, some of them went on point, but they had to go through the same stringent assessment. And those which had a hysterectomy in their 30s for whatever reason had to go and have a bone density test because once you're going through a hysterectomy, then the whole bone density thing becomes an issue because they start menopause. And so they'd have to be doing a bone density test before I put them on point.
Mm. I love what you're saying because I'm just remembering now how often I was told, Monica, straighten your knees, straighten your knees. And I'm thinking now, like, I didn't have the biomechanical ability to
Oh,
use my willpower to straighten my knees because my
uh,
knees just couldn't straighten because I needed to work on that
yeah,
outside the context of a ballet class and do some really
yeah,
basic movements to train that ability. And then
yeah,
maybe I could use that in the context of a ballet class, but no
yeah.
one was talking about that.
Well, of course not. And the thing is, I mean, I hate it when teachers say, but I've told her not to do this, I've told her not to do that. And my question is, have you ever told them what to do? I mean, if you keep giving somebody the same correction over and over again, whatever it is you're saying to that dancer, it's obviously not helping the dancer. The dancer is doing her damnedest to do what you want. But if she's not giving you what you want, then maybe you need to re-examine what you're asking your dancer to do.
I was trying so hard to straighten my knees.
Yeah,
I just
I
physically
bet.
couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Another question I have. Okay.
Mm,
So back to me at age, now I'm 13 and I have point shoes. And we were told all kinds of things about breaking in your point shoes and all this. So, um, oh, this is going to be embarrassing. You're going to give me a piece of your wisdom, I'm sure. But so I really I didn't have great feet. Like my feet are okay, they're average, but I couldn't really create a nice pointy line with my feet.
mhm.
Um, and so if I was in a really stiff pair of point shoes, it just looked like a block at the end of my foot that I couldn't articulate. So I would make sure to break the shit out of my point shoes. So what I would do is I would just wear them around the house so that my feet would get really sweaty and the sweat would break down the shank. So my
Yeah,
shoes would get really, really soft. And then I would use a knife and I would take my shoe and I would cut the middle of the shank so that I could really point my foot in it. And then I would just let my shoe get incredibly, incredibly soft and mushy. And I was really hard on my shoes, and I think they would last about 2 weeks before they started getting really, really floppy and unsupportive. But then I also felt really guilty about asking for a new pair of shoes because my family wasn't rich, and these shoes are $100 at least for a pair, and
yeah,
it would last me 2 weeks. So I just wear this floppy pair of shoes for months and months. And I'm just curious what you're covering your face with your hands. What's going through your mind as I'm telling you my story?
Instagram is full of it. You have all these professional dancers, you know, they slam their shoes into door frames, they walk on it, they slap them on the stone steps outside and what have you. Well, a point shoe is a work of art. It's been handcrafted by a specialist. That's why they cost so much money. So why would you destroy the shoe before you put it on your feet? Wouldn't it be better to retrain your feet to be strong enough to maneuver a shoe?
Oh, you're making me feel bad about my choices.
Yeah, but the point is, you can't help that because you didn't, as a 13-year-old, decide that that's the way to do it. You were probably told to do it. And
Mm,
there's so much stuff on the internet and on Instagram and all of these places, and it just makes me sick what they put out there. And it's absolutely stupid.
mm,
You know, like I had one dancer that I was working with in Colombia. She had this same idea. In order for me to have a big enough arch, I have to have the softest shoe I possibly can. We got an image of her in this point shoe, and the whole shoe through the metatarsal heads just folds in half, so that the toes go not in line with the arch, but underneath, breaking off through the metatarsal heads. And I said, I'm sorry, but you need a much harder shank because your foot just folds in half. There's just no way. So we put her in a hard shank, and she said, "Oh, this is never going to work." I said, "Look, try it." And then we filmed it, and she could see. I got her to step from one foot to the other, and this was going underneath, and the other one, oh, I'm being held, you know. So it's kind of like, again, she came with the shoe has to break low down for me to have a high enough arch, and so I will have the softest shank I can possibly find, not realizing that the body cannot be supported on the tips of your toes. It's not possible. Look how small those bones are. It's just not going to happen. So there is so much ignorance out there, and so many injuries could be prevented if we just looked at it logically and not just from an idealist point of view of what something should look like.
mm. And that really is a big source of a lot of people's challenges they encounter in their dance careers is just
Yeah.
not knowing any better and just doing, like you
Right,
said, the
that's right. They
traditional
do
thing.
what everybody else does in the class, you know, and or what the teachers tell them to do, and the teachers do what their teachers told them to do. And when you ask them, where is this coming from? Well, it's tradition. We've always done it like that.
Mhm.
And it's not until you actually look at the anatomy of the foot and look at what you do to this foot in this situation that it becomes clear that that's actually the most stupid thing you can do for your feet.
So you have a lot of strong opinions.
I'm
Um,
sorry.
no, this is great. This is why I wanted to speak with you, Esther. But I'm wondering if you can tell me what are some of the biggest misconceptions or the biggest myths that you've encountered about training dancers' feet and fitting point shoes over your 40 years of experience?
Well, one of the biggest mistakes is that we dance in the same size shoe on both feet.
Mm,
Now, there's quite a lot of people who have half a size, if not a full size, difference between one foot and the other. And so that means that if the foot isn't fitted individually or measured properly in width and length, one foot will suffer tremendously because there is not enough support in the shoe, which is too big. Because they fit the bigger foot and the smaller one just has to put up with it.
mm,
So that's a misconception. Um, the other thing is that like you've already mentioned, the shoe has to be destroyed before you can wear it, which is just absolutely not true. I mean, yes, you're right. You have to walk in the shoe because that starts to break in the demi point as you roll. But then the shoe should be hung up to dry because it becomes a plaster cast of your foot. And then it should be hung up to dry because it will actually, you do the fitting as best you can, as accurately as you can. And then the last bit is done with the heat of the feet and the sweat, as you say, going into the box, which then allows the box to reshape itself and give you the correct support and then harden again. So what else? Yeah, I mean, one of my pet hates is that everyone can go on point. Yeah, you can, but you get injured. So, it's the thing is, there is also this belief that if you want to be a ballerina, you have to have your feet crippled. It's simply not true. None of my dancers have crippled feet.
You know
So,
what? I had a dance teacher once tell us that to be a dancer is to wake up every day and be in pain. And
right.
I really internalized that.
Yeah. It's that means you're misusing your body on a daily basis.
Mm.
And if we started to not do that to our bodies, we could finish our career when we choose to, not when the body has simply given up.
Mm.
You know, how often do you see dancers who have an accident on stage, they get a cortisone injection and get sent out again. By the time they come off stage, they're so injured they'll not recover from it. It's just
Mhm.
horrendous. It just should not happen.
Mm.
If you're injured, you're injured. You know, and if something happens, then something's happened and you need to deal with it, not give a cortisone injection and start again. I
Mm.
mean, there are some really stupid things going on right now. And, you know, when you've got 16-year-olds with cortisone injections in their feet, it's just shouldn't be allowed.
Mm.
Instead of figuring out why that dancer is in pain.
Hmm. Is there anything that you've changed your mind about over the course of your career?
No, but if I know everything, please shoot me.
So you're always learning.
You have to have an open mind. You have to be prepared to constantly see what's coming along. But one of the other pet hates I have is all the tools that we have. You know, you have to have the foot stretcher, you have to have this, you have to have that. Unless you can do things out of your own strengths, it's not worth doing it.
I
A foot
wanted to
stretcher
ask
will
you
just
about the
stretch the
foot
ligament.
stretcher,
Yeah,
the ballet foot stretcher.
yeah,
Tell me what you think about this. I've had non-dancers ask me if they should get a foot stretcher. So it's for people who don't know, it's this wooden contraption that you put your heel in, and there's a bit of an arch that then
yeah.
you conform your foot over the arch, and I think you strap your foot into it, so it forces you to plantar flex your ankle and point your foot over top of this wooden
Mm,
arch-shaped block. And
yeah.
idea is if you leave your foot in there passively and then train some exercises while your foot's in there passively, then you'll improve your point. Which, I mean, to someone who doesn't know any better, that sounds pretty great. What's wrong with the foot stretcher?
It stretches all the ligaments, and once the ligaments are stretched, your whole ankle joint will fall apart. So it's all of these things, all of these passive stretches is one of the worst things you can do to your body. You need to have resistance stretches, not passive stretching.
Mhm.
You know, all of that kind of passive stuff is the worst thing you can do to your body. And the foot stretcher in particular causes all sorts of trigger points, like you can get spurs at the back of your ankles. You certainly, as I said, overstretch the ligaments. And once the ligaments, as you know, I don't need to tell you this, but muscles attached to tendons, the muscles can stretch. And when you stop using them, they go back to their normal lengths. Tendons cannot be stretched and ligaments cannot be stretched. And ligaments don't move at all because they hold the joint together. And once you stretch the ligaments, like if you overstretch your hip joint or if you overstretch your ankle, the whole joint will fall apart. And once it falls apart, you've lost all the stability in it.
Mm.
So passive stretching is an absolute no, no, no. And why the whole ballet world is obsessed with all these stupid stretches, I shall never understand. Because a lot of it is nerve stretching, not just muscle stretching. And then when the dancer's trying to dance, they just fall apart because they just can't actually hold it together anymore.
Mm.
And so very often when people came back after the summer holidays and not having done anything, haha, they're also much more flexible because they haven't done any stretching for a while.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Stretching was hugely emphasized when I was a dancer, and even in the world of getting out of pain, I think the role of stretching is a little bit misunderstood because range of motion doesn't necessarily mean that you are able to use that range of motion in a way that's meaningful for whatever
Yeah,
you're trying to do, whether that means dancing or whether that just means walking down the street without feeling pain in your back or whatever it is that your
yeah,
body's experiencing. So I
yeah.
actually have had the experience of after stopping dancing and stopping passive stretching, my body feels stiffer and my range of motion is significantly less, but everything feels so much better because so I will probably never go back to actually having a stretching practice, but I do have a movement practice which involves moving my joints in a way that is
Right.
within a
Yeah.
healthy amount for what my body specifically needs based on my
Mm.
specific limitations and unique struggles.
Yeah.
So let's not,
Taking it to a safe range of movement
yeah.
is important. And
I used to lie in bed at night in the splits because I thought that, well, just as if I can fit in as much passive stretching into my life as possible, surely I will become a better dancer. So you're covering your face again. I know I've done all the things that people should not do if they want to actually have a sustainable dance career. So I'm a good educational source for what not to do here.
yes, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I
I
had one
couldn't
more
agree more.
question about your thoughts about using padding in point shoes. So, for those of you who have never been in point shoes, you'll probably you can assume they might be a little bit painful being up on your toes like that. And my dance training was incredible. I loved my ballet teachers for what they taught me about how to do ballet technique, but there was one little thing that there's a few things that were not so great. And one of them was that we were shamed for using padding in our shoes because it was seen to be weak. So
Right.
I didn't wear padding in my shoes. And I was okay. Eventually, I got to a place where I was used to the discomfort of not having padding. But I'm wondering if you factor in when you're fitting point shoes, do you factor in padding and how that affects the fit of the shoe? And do you encourage dancers to use padding or what do you do?
Well, if we're talking about padding in terms of toe pads,
Yeah, to cushion your toes
so
so
yeah,
it's really
all right.
painful in
So
the shoe.
okay, you just said the word cushion. What happens when you sit down on the cushion? What does the cushion do?
It feels soft and comfortable, and
But
you're going like this. It squishes
it,
down,
it
it
squishes down.
compresses.
It's not going to give you any support, is it? It
Right.
just collapses underneath your foot. So it's just something else in the shoe, but it's not actually supporting you in any way. So
Mm.
this is why we tape the feet in a specific way to protect the growth plates, because as I said before, we can't wait until someone is 18 or 19 before we put them on point, before the growth plates are sealed. But we can make sure their intrinsic muscles are strong, the feet are aligned, and then we, on top of that, we will uh, uh, tape the metatarsal heads and all the joints in the toes.
Mm.
That then allows me to give you a point shoe that fits the foot like a glove. So the foot isn't like a cheese on a grater going up and down inside the point shoe, but it's just the point shoe and the foot become one. And then
Mm.
through that melting process, as I said before, you then do the final adjustment of the actual fitting through because the shoe doesn't have a right and a left shoe to start with, so they're all straight. And concept of right and left shoe is something that only come up in the last 150 years or so. Before that, all shoes were straight. So, but point shoes to this day still don't have a right and a left. And so I can fit the shoe really tight. And it also allows me to use two different pairs of shoes for one person, because they'll wear one size on one foot and the other size on the other foot. You still have two pairs of shoes that are just made up of two different sizes. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if the foot is supported properly on point, you don't really need any cushioning inside it, because it just,
Mm.
so in a sense, the idea that you shouldn't have a lot of cushioning inside the shoe is correct, but you need to also protect the growth plates and you need to give the support through the taping.
Mm.
So the foot is protected, like a boxer would never go into a boxing glove without wrapping his fingers and hands and what have you with God knows how many bandages before it goes into the boxing glove. So imagine going into a point shoe without protecting those joints. I mean, you know, was it 25 times your body weight every time you do a roll of it that hits those toes?
Mm.
Just think
So
about it.
So my teacher, she was onto something here, but maybe the way that she went about expressing to us was a little bit off. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think anyone needs to be shamed for not wearing for wearing cushioning in their shoes, whether she's right or wrong about it. But also, we didn't get any advice or instruction about how to tape our feet. She just said, tape your toes, don't wear padding. And then if she found out you were wearing padding, it was bad news for you that day in class.
Right. Okay. Well, the thing is, I'm never for shaming. I'm much more for educating.
I agree.
You know, it's not about shaming. It's about facts. Um, also, if you have a toe pad, the point shoe has to be big enough to accommodate that toe pad. So it means the foot is lifted out of the protective box in the point shoe, because now you've got a cushion in the bottom, the foot won't go all the way down. So that means that the support through the metatarsal heads is now no longer there. So the metatarsal heads hang out the top of the box.
Mm.
So um, the point shoe can't do the job it's designed to do if you wear a toe pad.
Mm.
However, there are sometimes, as dancers have often very knobbly toes, it is a good idea to use like a suede thing, a suede cap to go over it, which is a very thin layer which will protect the skin. But with the taping, very rarely do we use this. Or I use individual little gel caps. They're white, um, very thin, and they could just go over a toe or over a joint in order to protect that joint.
So should point be pain-free?
Yes,
Really?
absolutely. Yes.
Oh, how many
Yeah.
dancers actually experience pain-free
Lots.
point?
I mean, every time I do a pointer fitting and they stand up in a new pair of shoes, they go, "Oh my God, it doesn't hurt."
It's incredible.
So if the foot is well prepared, if the foot is taped, and if the foot is fitted correctly, then you should be able to dance on point pain-free. And I've
Mm.
gone through this experience many, many times. And so when people come to me and they're in toe pads and they're just absolutely not prepared to give up the toe pad, what I'll do is the shoes are always too big anyway. So I tape one foot and I usually use the foot that they don't like. You know, we all have a foot that points better than the other. So we use the foot that we don't like so much. We tape that. We put the tights back on, the cushion back on, back into the shoe, stand up and feel the difference between the taped and the non-taped foot. And every time they go, "Oh my God, that feels so different." You
Mm.
know, this makes such a huge difference.
Mm.
So we say to them, "Okay, well, you've got this pair of pointe shoes. Why don't you get used to the taping? Do all your ballet classes with your feet taped deep, even in flatty ballet shoes. And then when you got used to the taping, and you need new pointe shoes, we refit you, but without the toe pads.
Mm.
Just use the taping, and it works every time."
Wow. I wish that every young ballet dancer and, well, any ballet dancer at any phase in their career could have the opportunity to work with you. And not just because of what you know and what you're able to do for them and how you can educate them, but also because of how you've lived through this experience and have such a wonderful perspective and attitude towards working with a body. And I'm just really curious as well, about what do you currently do in your own movement practice in your daily life to support your body's needs? And you mentioned you have an exercise that you still do from all those
Yeah,
years ago. What else do you
yeah.
do? What's your movement practice look like these days?
Well, I did ballet until 6 months ago, and then I changed my practice because as I'm getting older, it is just really, really hard to do that. So I go for a 3K walk every day, and I don't mean a dawdle, I mean a walk, fast walk. And I do that religiously every day. I then have a stretching out routine, which is, and my hips obviously are getting old and stiff, so I need to stretch them out after every walk. And then I do at night, I do another half an hour of breathing exercises, back exercises, some core exercises. And I do lean up against the wall with my legs up in the air or against the wall and my arms up for 10 minutes. And that really helps to get everything back in the right place. And then I go to sleep. But I do that religiously every day.
Mm, that's amazing. It sounds like throughout your entire life, the love of movement, it's just always been there. And it's so nice to hear that you have a practice that helps you to support you
Yeah,
in
and
whatever
then,
be.
I mean, I haven't been to an osteopath I mean, I go to the osteopath perhaps every 2, 3 years for a checkup, make sure everything's in the right place and what have you. Um, I just know that if things hurt, then it's because I haven't done this or I haven't done that.
Mm.
So, I just, but I am getting older and I can feel that.
Mm.
And with this conference coming up, I'll be standing for 3 days and I'm not quite sure whether I can do that. So I
Mm.
will have to have a chair to sit down every now and then in between, but
Mm.
standing is hard with my back. So
I understand, yeah. I've also been, and I'm only 35. Yeah.
half my
And
age.
and I have taught courses as well where I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it through because of having a foot problem at the time.
Yeah,
And I actually taught a course once where I started standing up. Over the course of the day, I started to deteriorate. By lunchtime, I couldn't stand up, so I taught the entire rest of the afternoon sitting on the floor, and then that evening I went to the hospital. And I don't recommend that.
yeah.
But I had this big thing psychologically around, oh, if I can't even stand up, then what value will I have to convey as an educator?
Mm.
It was
Yeah,
so
sure.
focused on,
Yeah.
how am I
Well,
perceived?
I'm having practices of standing up for a long time. I keep doing that.
Mm.
So, and the other thing also is I've got myself some really good shoes.
Mm.
I kind of got over myself. I'd like to have elegant shoes, even if they're relatively flat. But I now have proper sports shoes, which actually support the arch properly. And if you're standing for a long time, you really need that help, I think. However,
Hmm.
I still do my intrinsic foot exercise muscles. I do that when I finish my walk. I do my intrinsic foot muscle exercises every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
And I, do stuff with my ankles and blah, blah, blah. I do that every day. But it actually to wear shoes which support you properly in this situation is going to be crucial. And I've been experimenting with different shoes,
Hmm.
you
What have
know.
you discovered about what do you have a pair of shoe that you find really works for you for standing for long periods?
Yes, I think they're called Brooks.
Hmm.
And they really help with the whole alignment of the leg as well. So they have an arch support in it. I use them for walking as well, and that makes walking easier because you're actually in the right alignment to start with. I had to come out of my ballet walk, of course, because ballet dancers don't use their hips anymore when they walk. They just walk with
There's
their legs and the pelvis is stock still, and of course that causes problem. So
hmm.
I've relearned to walk without doing that. Um, took me a long time, and quite, you know, have to get used to swinging my tail.
Yep.
So, and if I don't, I get a lower backache. As soon as I do it, it goes away. So it's kind of my body tells me that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So
Our bodies are very intelligent and they will
yes,
communicate what we need to be doing, whether or not we
yes, if we
understand the
listen to it,
messages.
yeah, we just need to listen to it. Yeah.
Yes. What does that mean for you? I think it's something that we hear a lot is listen to your body. What does the idea of listening to your body, what does that look like practically for you? You mentioned listening to when you have pain, but what else? What else does that mean?
Well, I've got to be careful with my weight because if I'm too heavy, then the the body doesn't like it.
Mm.
So I'll try and stay, if I can, under 70 kilos, which is still a bit heavy for me, but I don't want to be skinny because should I get ill or something, then there's not much left. So a little bit of a resource is fine. But I mean, I'm a close size 12, that's fine. That's not a problem. I don't need to be a skinny 10. um, so yeah, it's being disciplined with food, eat the right food, eat good food, eat fresh food, have fresh air, have time to breathe, and I think again with the evening routine that helps because there's a nice breathing routine that I do. And I use sleep tapes when I can't sleep because as I get older, to try and sleep through the night becomes harder and harder.
Mhm.
So I found something called Sleep Magic, which is really rather good that I enjoy very much. And
Mm.
um, even if I just put it on for 5 minutes, I'm gone again, sort of thing. So put it on a timer so it's on for 10 minutes, but I'm gone within 5 minutes, so that's fine. And if I wake up again, I'll just turn it on again. So, you know, instead of turning around wondering, you should be asleep, why aren't you asleep? It just makes it worse and worse. So
Yeah.
just accept that that's it. So deal with
Yeah.
it.
I am that person that I get anxiety about not being able to sleep, and then I can't sleep because I'm worrying about
Exactly.
not being
Yeah.
able to sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, you know, it's going to bed at a regular basis. I mean, I go to bed much earlier now than I used to. I mean, I'm in bed by 9:30.
Mm.
So, but then also I wake up again at 6 in the morning. So, you know, that's a long enough day for me.
And you mentioned earlier you have this expo coming up, and I wonder if you could tell me a bit about what is the expo coming up, and it's in multiple cities, correct?
Yeah,
You're doing on tour?
it's in Bellevue, which is next door to Seattle in Washington State. And the plan is to hold it at Northwest Pacific Ballet School, which is linked with the Pacific Northwest Ballet in Seattle. But the company is in Seattle and the school is in Bellevue. And then the other place that we'll be working, which is on Pointe Bellevue. So the first 2 days are at Pacific Northwest Ballet School, and we will bring together ballet teachers, pointe shoe fitters, dance health professionals, and anyone else who deals with dancers. And the idea is to get these professionals to see the perspective from a dancer's point of view. So instead of talking to them what they should be doing, we're just going to explore what the dancer is going through or what a dancer has to do to go safely onto pointe. And then the hope is that through looking at it from this point of view, and for them to sit on the floor and actually explore this, like I did with you, they have to actually go through it. So we say to them, the first day you come as a dancer, and we'll take you through the very basics, which ultimately lead to being able to step up onto pointe safely in alignment. So on the second day, we will explore how to prepare the dancer for pointe in terms of assessment. What is a pre-pointe assessment? What is a foot assessment? What is a shoe assessment? How should the foot be supported on pointe? Do we use taping or do we use toe pads? And then the advantages of toe pads compared with taping, and see what the difference is between the two. And this is more of a discussion day, from having looked at the basics from a dancer's point of view in the first day, to then see how we can support the dancer to a safe transition onto pointe. And then the third day will be held at on Pointe Bellevue, where Ria Whitfield and Camilla Uribe from Colombia will talk about all the different pointe shoes, how they have evolved, and what kind of pointe shoes we have, because the pointe shoes today have gone through an enormous transition. I mean, you can have 3D printed pointe shoes now, believe it or not. There's all sorts of things. There's a lot to learn, and I don't know anything about all that. I just know about Grishko shoes, and that's all I know about, because that's the shoe I've been working with all my life. But yeah, this will be very exciting, because those two women have an enormous amount of knowledge that I don't have. And there is also Georgina Barr will be coming with me. And she is a world famous dance podiatrist. So she will back up all the anatomy on what we're visiting. And so any of the medics can ask her all the questions. So she'll be presenting the medical side of it. And then we'll also have some stories from how the system has worked in different parts of the world. So it should be quite informative. And we're hoping to have a social evening where we have a meet and greet over a glass of wine and some nibblies or whatever, so that everyone can meet everyone and there's time to actually talk a bit more. So yeah, it's very exciting. And then we also got an event for parents and dancers, young dancers either about to go on pointe or just have gone on pointe, and taking them through what they really need to know to be safe in a pointe shoe. And educate the parent, because the parent shouldn't just pay for the shoes, they should actually understand what's involved.
Well, it sounds like an incredible event. I really love the structure of first taking the practitioners through the experience as if they're a dancer, because I think
Yes.
to really understand how to give that experience to someone else, you have to have
Yeah.
gone through it yourself, or
Yourself.
you really
Yeah.
don't know in your
Yeah.
bones what you're
Yeah.
trying to convey
And
to.
in fairness, the teachers themselves, but if when they were a child and went to ballet, somebody stood in front of them and they just copied what was happening in front of them.
Hmm.
They don't necessarily take it all apart. That doesn't come until you're injured and then you have to revisit why it's
Hmm.
not working. So if we actually came from a different point of view, so that when you first teach a plie in a tendu, you teach it with a bit more biomechanics. I know this sounds like complicated, but you can build stories around it for children. Children like exploring, you know. Um,
Hmm.
so this means and ways of doing this.
Hmm.
And yeah, one with the extension of the foot, we had this story of the ladybirds living in the hip joint, and they all come out to play, and they find their way down to the toes, and then find their way to the second toe, and then if they're not in the right place, they fall off the foot. So you have to make sure it stays nicely balanced. And then it's time to go home because dinner is ready and they all have to go home. And the quickest way is in a straight line, which is from the second toe through the center of the ankle, through the knee to the center of the hip joint.
I mean, this is useful for adults learning how to move too, not just for children. I mean, even as movement practitioners and therapists, a lot of us are stuck in our heads quite a bit. And I think what is so valuable is to have a new image to explore your body with,
Yeah,
not just be, okay, I'm going to mechanically point my toe and accomplish this with it, but yeah, to have a bit of a visual and something fun to
have a
go with it.
story.
Movement should be
Yes,
fun.
have a story. Have a story works. And
Yeah.
it's interesting how children are perfectly capable of learning that way because
Mm,
they love exploring and they love hearing the same story over and over again.
I
And God
do.
help you if you've missed something out.
Yes. And just to close up, Esther, I was wondering if you have, in with all of the wisdom you have and everything you've learned over your life, what would be a piece of advice that you would like to leave dancers with, or any human being really with, who's going through a little bit of a journey with their body, trying to help out with pain or trying to optimize the way they're moving in some way? What would be one piece of advice you think you could give somebody that would help?
Ask for help.
Mm.
And then when the help is offered to you, have the guts to step through that door.
Did you have to do that?
A lot. Yes, I've been given lots of opportunities of doing things, and it would have been easier to just say, no, I'm not going there.
Mm.
But taking a chance, and it's so long as the body is not hurting at the time. I'm not asking to take risks over stuff we don't know and we don't understand, but opportunities come along. And the biggest door I'm stepping through is this conference. I never thought I'd do something like this. And it's taken a lot of guts to do it. And I have, in fact, what I've done with it, I've got lots of professionals that I appreciate and they understand me, and they're highly qualified in their part of the dance world and what they're doing. And I've rammed the concept past all of these people. So it's been peer checked over and over and over again. So that what I don't want to do is stand there and tell something that's not there. And everyone's telling me that this is going to be fine and that there's the information's not out there at the moment. We need to share it.
Mm. Ask for help.
Ask for help is the advice, and it will be given. And be prepared to try something new,
Mm.
you know, because just because it's always been done like that doesn't necessarily mean that's your best option.
Mm.
So but being challenged into thinking about things in a different way can
Mm.
often open doors that you had no access to before. And the
Mm.
other thing is find out what really happens rather than what you think is happening.
Yes. Oh my goodness, Esther. The amount of times that I've had people come to me and they tell me exactly what they've been told is wrong with their body. My physio told me that I do this and this and this, and this is my problem. And then we check it, and it's actually not true. And they've just been told a lot of crap about their bodies that isn't true. And like you said, find out what is actually true. And that is the first
Find out
step.
what is true and find out what is true for you.
Mm,
That's the other thing. And the thing is, trust your instinct. When you meet someone, you either click with them and you can trust that person, or you're going to walk away. And I tell you something I do, because I'm not very good at arguing with people. I can't bear arguing with people. I can have a discussion, but I really don't like fighting with people. So before I work with anyone, I do an interview with them, even if that takes an hour or an hour and a half. But I want to make sure that I'm on the same level with that person, and they're not going to attack me, so that I can actually work with them. And it has to be an exchange between two people
mm,
rather than me teaching you something. It's we go on a journey together, and the person that's going to work with me has to be prepared to do that. And through the interview, that becomes clear.
mm,
And if it's not there, I'll just say to them, I don't think this is the right thing for you right now. I don't think you're in the right space to do that right now.
mm.
And so
Well,
quite often I turn work down because I know I can't help them because they won't let me in.
mm. I think that's amazing to hear. Something that I need to do more, I think, in my life. Well,
And the thing is, we can't help everyone. It's impossible. We can
mm,
only help those that want to help themselves. There has to be a will from the other side to actually change something about their body or the way things are happening to them. And if
mm,
they're not prepared to have a change, and it doesn't matter what you do, you can't help them.
mm. Yes. Ask for help and be in a place where you are open to being helped.
Yeah, and start somewhere safe.
Hmm.
Start in a safe place.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
incredible advice. I think, again, fundamental. It goes back to the love of the fundamentals. Well, Esther, it was lovely to go on this journey with you in
Thank
conversation.
you.
Is there a place where people can learn more about you if they are intrigued by what you've been saying and want to see if they can consult you for
Yes.
some guidance?
Yeah. Well, one way of finding me is by name, Esther Juon. Go on Google and you'll find lots of stuff about me. Then there is youonpointe.org is the website for the point shoe side of things. And then pointeshoesummit.org is the conference that we're going to. And on the conference, you find everything that we're doing. And we just decided that we're going to do Zoom as well. We're going to have a Zoom element at the conference. And I found just the right person to host it. And so she will work with us and with the Zoom audience, because I don't want the Zoom audience to be passive. I want them to be involved. That's really important. I
Oh,
don't
that's
want
great.
them just running like a glass of water down a wall. I want them to have an experience. And for that, I needed the right person to host that part of the show. So, and they can then ask Erin all the questions, and then Erin can come back to us with the stuff that she can't answer.
Mm.
And we have somebody specific which will film the conference and stream the whole thing. So that will
Oh,
be really
fantastic.
exciting. Yeah,
So
it's
anyone
a
who's
good
interested
question.
in participating in your conference online, maybe we can leave a link for
Yes,
them to get some
yeah,
information about that. That'd be
yeah.
wonderful.
So just go to the website,
Cool.
pointeshoesummit.org. Very
Great.
simple.
Well, thank you, Esther. Thanks
Thank
for
you so
taking the
much for
time.
having me.